Hello again. I now want to share with you some of the topics that we're going to start with reproduction. And reproduction is a pretty cool comparative study, right? We have everything from fish to amphibians all the way up to the mammals, which they themselves have quite a variation, right? We have placental mammals. We are placental mammals. We have egg layers like the platypus. We don't have, we have the platypus and echidna, and that's pretty much it for mammals in terms of egg layers. But then we have the marsupials, which have pouches. And so we'll talk about all of these and talk some about why we have the different reproductive strategies, what's the advantages and disadvantages. Now, all vertebrates, so let's again start with what we see in common. So all vertebrates have distinct male and female sexes. So we don't see any hermaphrodites. We don't see any asexual reproduction. We have all sexual reproduction, and with very few exceptions, we see male and female organisms all throughout their life. There are a few weird examples where, in very extreme circumstances, you can have hormonal changes affect the sex of like a fish or a reptile, but those are very, very few exceptions. So what do all female reproductive structures have in common? Like all vertebrates have these. And really, all vertebrates are going to have all vertebrate females are going to have an ovary, which is going to create the eggs. And here's where you can have a lot of variation. You're going to have some vertebrates that are going to make 500 eggs, 300 eggs. And then you're going to have mammals or birds which focus on 3, 4, 1 in the case of humans, right? That ovary is going to create eggs. And the other job of the ovary would be to generate female sex hormones. And these would predominantly be estrogen, progesterone, and of course the brain is involved in the regulation of these as well. But that's the job of the ovary. And then we need some way to get the egg to the place it needs to be, either outside or to the uterus. And that's going to be the job of the oviduct. Now, the oviduct has had many iterations, names over the years, at least with humans, right? I've seen books refer to it as an oviduct. I've seen books refer to ours as a uterine tube. You're probably most familiar with fallopian tube, right? But the bottom line is that's a tube that takes the egg somewhere. And that's going to be true for all vertebrates. All females have that. Now, common male reproductive structures are going to be the testes, which create sperm cells. And again, lots of variation, but generally speaking, testes are going to make far more sperm cells than egg cells. That's just a pretty general idea that you're going to want to make more sperm cells than you do egg cells. And then the testes are also going to have male sex or hormones. Testosterone is going to be the main one there. Now, just like an oviduct, you're going to see a sperm duct. I forgot that in my video. I'll fix it by the time you guys have this. So the sperm duct is going to carry the sperm where it needs to go, whether or not that's outside or to the female reproductive tract. So you can see again, here's a comparative diagram, and you guys can see the fact that whether or not we're looking at an amphibian or a bird or a mammal, one thing that they all have in common, notice all of the males have a paratestes, and you can see that in the dark pink. The males all have a sperm duct. You can see that in number 5. There's a sperm duct that takes it somewhere. Usually it's going to be taking it outside, but either to the outside or to the female body. And the females all have an ovary and the oviduct. Now, what's kind of interesting is when you get to the mammal, you can see the ovary is much smaller. And that's going to lead us into this idea of why can it be smaller? What's the idea there? Why do they do that? Now, of course, with a mammal, you see the urethra. And well, the urethras, it can be pretty common, but the female is going to have the uterus. You might be thinking that is not a uterus that I remember, but this is a uterus in an animal that has litters. So this could be from a cat, and you would have the kittens all along. They call them uterine horns. And it's one of the cooler differences in mammals that give birth to many babies. They have these divided uteruses, uteri. And they have the divided uterus, which then carries kittens or puppies or bear cubs all along the uterine horns. But their ovaries are small, and that's because they're not going to be making as many eggs. Now, another interesting thing to notice about birds, there is a shell gland, and you'll see a short clip in the video that wraps the egg in the hard shell. So let's take a look about the fertilization of these animals. Now, I like to show the difference between the fish and the chicken because it is a really good example of the two, right? External fertilization versus internal fertilization. So this is referring to where does the sperm fertilize the egg. You guys probably recall that from your middle school days. You've got an egg, it's haploid, it only has half of the genetic components. The sperm has the other half. The sperm is going to unite with the egg and fertilize the egg. Where does this occur? Does this occur outside in the environment, or does this occur in the body of the female? And so, for instance, in fish and amphibians, you're going to see external fertilization, and it's pretty logical. The female is going to lay her eggs, and in fish or frogs, toads, salamanders, it's got to be in water. It's got to be in an aquatic area. And then the male is going to lay or produce the sperm, deposits the sperm right over the eggs. And it's a little bit better than, for instance, the jellyfish or the corals that just release everything and just hope for the best, right? The salmon, in this case, is going to, the male knows where the female laid her eggs. And so he can generally deposit the sperm right over them. Now, it's still vulnerable. Think about the disadvantages of this. Unless you're Marlin in Finding Nemo and the clownfish that guards his eggs, your eggs, your fertilized eggs, your babies, your embryos are out there in the open for anybody to potentially get. Versus internal fertilization. And you can see with the birds, what they're trying to do is make sure the sperm get deposited inside the female's body. For instance, in internal fertilization, we would see an actual mating where the male and female are in a intercourse, right? The male is physically and the female are physically connected together, either by pressing up their genitalia in the case of birds, or in the case of mammals, you would have a male reproductive structure, usually the penis, which enters the female body and deposits the sperm there. So you're going to see that across the board with birds, mammals, and reptiles. You're going to see internal fertilization. External fertilization, the advantage is that, well, you're not really having to really work at making sure you get together, right? You're just going to release the eggs, the male's going to release the sperm. Yay, now we got large number of offspring, and you're going to produce a good size. But the disadvantage is, it's outside in the water, and they're soft, right? They don't have a shell, these fish and amphibians. And so anybody can have these have at them, and unless you have guarding and parental, which is rarer, it's not outside of the, but it rarely happens. And so, generally speaking, you're going to see more offspring because even if only 10% survive, well, that's something, right? If you produce 200 eggs and 20% of them survive, you're doing pretty good. Now, again, there are some amphibians that protect, there are some fish that guard, but it's out there, right? If you have a bigger predator, yeah, you're gonna get eaten. Internal fertilization, the advantage is, well, it's protected. Either it's protected inside the mother or it's protected inside the shell. So there is going to be a likelihood of survival. Now, that still depends on the parental care. So, sea turtles that lay her eggs inside the beach, when those sea turtles emerge, they're fighting for their lives, right? They want to get to the water as quickly as they can and hide, right? And so that's still a risk, but you are going to at least protect, and it's going to ensure fertilization because you're getting the fertilization occurring inside the mother. And then she's going to either lay eggs or carry the baby inside of her. So you're going to watch a section from the demands of the egg, and which talks about the production of the egg. Just to clear up any misconception there, the eggs that you buy at the store are unfertilized eggs, right? You're gonna see this and kind of maybe get a wrong idea. Hens will tend to lay eggs because of hormonal signals, and so without a rooster, the hen is just gonna lay unfertilized eggs. But if there is a rooster, then we would have to candle the eggs and make sure that the egg is not fertilized, and or make sure that the embryo is growing and growing well. So, okay, when we come back on Monday or Tuesday, we're going to be taking a look at some of the specific structures and looking at the human reproductive system. So you're going to be asked to think about what maybe questions you have over the weekend. So have a good day.